This is Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium.
Today's guest is Jimmy Waldo from the band Alcatrazz. Alcatrazz formed in 1983 in Los Angeles and has been a well-known band with legendary players and singers who have passed through the band's ranks as much as they have for their music. Formed originally by the trio Jimmy Waldo, Shea, both fresh from the 1970s hitmakers, New England, and the short-lived band Warrior, featuring a pre-Kiss Vinnie Vincent, along with vocalist Graham Bonnet, himself with the impressive credentials having been a then recent member of Rainbow and the Michael Schenker Group. The band set about completing the lineup with the drummer Jan Uvena, formerly of Alice Cooper, and then a very young Yngwie Malmsteen, a guitarist who had quickly made a name for himself upon arriving in the United States in the early 1980s. Jimmy continues to be the heart and soul of Alcatrazz. Aside from being in the band, talented keyboardist, over the band's career, he has been one who has been finding himself as the center of the band's affairs and decision-making, from booking the band in the early days to working closely with various record labels to making sure other members at the height of the 1980s rock and roll decadence were present and accounted for when it came to getting the work done. Jimmy continues to be the heart and soul of the band as they hit the road in Europe later this coming fall, this year, with Girlschool and Bangalore Choir. It's a pleasure to have you on, Jimmy.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Wow. I have to tell you, I am a real 80s girl. I'm an 80s girl, but I'm a heavy metals girl. I just really love the 80s, especially for the fact that we found out really about music from our friends. And I clearly remember a couple of guys telling me about Alcatrazz. And then with Yngwie, they were like, you better watch that guy. They were like, we know that guy is going somewhere. And it was just wow. I was like, I could still remember one guy saying to me, keep watching him. And I was like, okay, all right, whatever. And they were like, no, really, you got to keep watching him. And I distinctly remember that guy calling me when he did go solo and he did his first, album. And the guy was like, see, I was right. I was like, all right, so you're psychic too.
Right.
Laughing.
Yeah, you didn't have to be psychic to do that one, though. I knew in the band, as we were touring, and Yngwie and I, we got along fine. I mean, we had fun on the road. He had his moments, and so did I. But when he left, ironically, it was we were all pros. Even Yngwie at his age was very professional about it. And so he and I talked, and I said, look, I know you got to go do your thing. I said, I totally understand that. I said, no hard feelings here. Wish you luck. And he said, yeah, man. He goes, I appreciate that. And he goes, I'm not going to let you guys down on the tour. I'll definitely finish the tour, no problem. And he goes, thanks for understanding. And we hugged, and that was it. It was no big deal.
Yes, I have to say that I'm very happy because in preparing for this interview, I was able to upload your song Jet to Jet. And I'm going to play it at the end of the interview. And I have to say that you guys really have stayed true to your original sound. It's amazing. I mean, the guitar and just everything about it. I could go back to like 1983. When you go back, you hear the songs. But then I went back and I looked at the video and I was like, wow, Island in the Sun. I was just like, oh my God, look at this video. I mean, it's just so iconic to the 80s. It must have been so much fun to do those videos, though. And then I looked at another one and I was like, oh my gosh, 1985 God Blessed video.
Yeah.
It was like, and I really like that because, MTV, for the younger audience, they don't seem to have the same memories that we do.
No.
But, songs and groups really seem to follow like a storyline. So a lot of that had to have a storyline to it. So you saw what the band looked like, you understood what the vibe of the band was, and then you wanted to run out and buy their album at Sam Goody's or Tower Records or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Yes.
And now it's all streaming and downloading and,
Yeah.
and you don't always get the visual to it.
It's kind of impersonal.
Yes.
Like you said, and you hit it on the head, you don't connect with the band the same way. Some people do connect with bands, obviously, but I know a lot of people that it's just so disposable. It's like they download something or they stream something, and it's good for a day or two, and then they're on to something else. And some people had their favorite bands, but it's not the same. It's definitely not the same.
Well, I'm really glad that they, still have the opportunity to get the music. And I'm really glad for a platform like YouTube because,
Yes.
it's documented. A lot of times I'm speaking with some guys I know in the business and they're like, don't look at Wikipedia, it's wrong, And I'm like, yeah, but it's on Wikipedia. Like, if you're on Wikipedia, you're somebody.
Well, those people... I know a little bit about it. No, those people are really good people, and they try hard to do that. But the format of Wikipedia is such that, it can be changed and things. But generally speaking, when I go there and look at things, it's pretty much 90%, 95%. I don't see too many crazy, like, whoa, who put that up there, kind of thing. So.
Yeah. That's so interesting. You've had such a vast career, and it's not really just with Alcatrazz. But in going back, I was like, wow, I didn't know he had done some things with Quiet Riot. So can you bring me back to, like, the beginning? Like, I don't really know about you personally. Like, how did you form an interest in getting into music yourself or thinking you can be a musician? Where did that come from?
Well, we had music in the house, and my parents weren't musicians, but there was always music playing. There was mostly classical music. And my oldest brother was a big opera fan, so I got introduced to opera. I love opera. So I got introduced to all that, and then we always had a piano. My mother liked to fool around on the piano. So I took some lessons when I was 10, 11, hated the lessons. Loved the sound of the instrument, loved playing, but I was totally lazy and hated piano lessons. I did play some piano, back then and was getting into it, but I just always loved listening to music. So it was real natural progression for me to want to play. I mean, I saw that coming at about 12, 13 years old. I said, oh yeah, I gotta play. Of course, I picked up a guitar and learned from my neighbor, my best buddy. He and I were going to play together. And so his dad taught us to play guitar. His dad was really good. So I was a guitar player, the second guitar player in a band for a couple of years in high school. And then I played a little bit of organ. We bought an organ. I was the only one that knew anything about keyboards. So everybody said, well, if we're going to play these certain songs, we have to have a key. So yeah, okay, I'll play. So that went on for a while. And then I got a Hammond B3 and a Leslie. And then all of a sudden I wasn't playing guitar anymore. So.
Wow, that is so interesting. So when you start playing guitar with your best buddy, what were your musical interests other than, having classical in the house? You must have had like the Beatles or something going on in the background.
Oh, I was a Beatles freak for sure. I wore my records out. It's a turntable. Beach Boys, the Beatles, the Animals. I love the Animals. And there were some other, King Crimson, the early King Crimson. And I don't know if you remember a band called The Soft Machine. They were an English prog band. But the keyboard player, big influence on me. He was using a really dirty organ sound way before anybody. That had a big influence on me. And then along came John Lord and Vincent Crane and these people. And I was like, oh my God, Rod Argent. And I was like, wow. But my early records were Beatles, Beach Boys, stuff like that.
That I understand. When I think of late 60s, early 70s, my mind automatically goes, especially for keyboards, to Elton John.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I mean, he's like him and Billy Joel to me.
Oh,
I
forget
mean,
about it.
oh my God, they're like right at the top of the crust with all that, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Billy Joel is one of my favorite artists. And I got to meet him and hang out with him a little bit. And great guy. Elton John, I was lucky enough for the band New England. We were signed to Universal. They had a big party in LA. We were from Boston, but we came to LA for this big Universal party. And we were a big deal on the label at the time. And we had a big dinner. It must have been 200 people in this dining area. And there was a little stage there with a grand piano. And I just thought, oh, they must do regular stuff there. And then all of a sudden, Elton John walked out to the piano with a bottle of champagne. He set the champagne down. There was another champagne in the bucket. And he said, well, I'm going to play some songs. He said, we'll see how it goes. He goes, I think this will be fun, though. And Elton John played for about an hour and a half. And I was 20 feet from that stage. I mean, I could hear him over. There was a little PA, but I could hear him live, like we were in the room together. That did it for me. That was like, oh my God. I loved Elton John before that, but after that, it was like, forget about it.
That's incredible. So, what you're noting is New England was your first band that you were signed. Is that correct?
There was a band before that, but I was just a sideman with a girl on RCA. I was the keyboard player. New England was the first big deal. Yeah. We rehearsed and wrote songs 7 days a week and killed ourselves writing songs, making demos, and doing all the usual, what everybody else did. We were bound and determined to get a record deal, and we were just going to be somebody. We just said, we're going to do this, and we just worked our ass off to get there, and it worked out for us. We got lucky.
Yeah, so New England was named that because you had relocated to Boston, or just all the guys were from Boston?
We were all from Boston at the time. I mean, I
Wow.
lived in Boston at that point about 10 years. So Gary Shea, same thing. He had lived in Boston for 10 years. Hirsch Gardner was from Canada, but he'd been in Boston for 15 years or something. And John Fannin was from Boston. We were just writing music. And then a guy that wanted to manage the band who was helping us out came up with that name, and we didn't like it. We were like, oh, no, there's already Boston. We don't want to be that. And we just ignored it. And the next thing you know, he had a couple of record companies come to see us, and we're still not getting it, and the record company comes in and says, hey, New England, great name. And we were like, yeah, okay. We didn't want the name really, and it just kind of ended up sticking. We had to have something. So
So was that Infinity Records that signed you?
yes,
Oh,
yes.
wow. And the manager, was that Bill Anacomie?
Bill O'Coin,
A coin. Okay.
yeah, who
Oh,
managed
wow.
Kiss. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow. So you really got lucky. Look at that.
Oh, it was crazy.
That is
Yeah,
just like the stars are aligned.
we extremely lucky. But I will say we had the songs. We had 17 songs that we worked really hard on those arrangements and making sure that those songs were accessible. We tried to pull back a little bit on the playing because we all thought we were great players, and we weren't. We were just average players. We concentrated on the songs, and that's what Bill was interested in. He came up to see us. Somebody that worked for him came to rehearsal, saw us, and then went back to Bill, said, you got to see these guys. Bill came up the next day and saw us and just said, okay, we're doing this. I want to sign you guys right now. So that whole thing just took off.
Can you describe what the music was when you say 17 songs? Like, what would it have sounded like? Like, I haven't heard any of those songs. So would it be more like a Kiss, or would it be more like, Crosby, Stills and Nash?
No, we were very influenced by English bands. I mean, heavily influenced. So there was a lot of influences in there, like Pink Floyd and Procol Harum, The Who. Gosh, you could just go down a list of English bands, and we were influenced by a lot of them. Really no American bands to speak of. I mean, I loved Billy Joel back then, but I wasn't a great piano player, so I didn't go after that, and that didn't fit the style of music we were doing. So, But yeah, mostly just influenced by English bands. And we were just oblivious to what was going on in Boston. I mean, we knew Jay Giles and the Cars, but we didn't pay any attention. Those guys they hit and were monster, success. But we were just in our own little world. We didn't really go to clubs. We just rehearsed all the time.
Well, that is the magic for success, I have to say. I do know that Infinity Records had moved on to Elektra. So how long did that transition happen?
Well, Infinity went under, basically. Mm-hmm. At that point, we were automatically on Universal because they owned Infinity. So we went out and had a meeting with the people at Universal, and we loved them. But Bill O'Coin was hell-bent on Elektra. They had friends at Elektra, and so Bill was, you got to be on Elektra, got to be on Elektra. Queen's on Elektra, you got to be on Elektra. So that took about a year to get off of that. That really hurt the band to do that. In my opinion, it was a big mistake because the people at Universal were excited about the band. We'd had great success with New England on that label, and there was no reason to leave. But we did, and c'est la vie.
Yeah, that I can see as being frustrated, especially during timing. When you're looking at a timeline, the band has been working so hard. Like you said, not even socializing, not even hanging out, nope. And then you're watching your timeline just get extended. And, so what actually happened at that point? What did you guys do?
Well, we kept writing and rehearsing, but we were just really disappointed it was very stressful because we'd call the office, O'Coin's office, say, well, what's going on? And he'd go, well, the lawyer, I won't even mention the name. This guy was a clown. He was a big time lawyer, but in my opinion, he was a clown. But anyway, he was taking forever to get this deal done. And that was the days of a lot of cocaine. We weren't doing cocaine. We couldn't afford it, and we didn't do it. So we didn't know what was going on in New York. We were in Boston. So it just took forever. So we just called it, well, so-and-so, the attorney, he's working on it, and Elektra this and Elektra that, and our attorney this and that. That just dragged on and on and on and on. And that really killed the band. After that, it was never the same because we had lost all that momentum. Our first album, we had a top 40 single. So we were on a roll. The second album didn't do as well as the first album, but we were out there, and we were touring a lot. So when we got that lull, waiting on the label to change labels, that just killed it. So we kept playing and we kept touring, but it wasn't the same. We couldn't play the big show. We'd been touring with Kiss and Styx and AC/DC and Journey and everybody. And at that point, we couldn't do that anymore because we had no record to talk about. We had no hit on the radio. So,
wow. Just think of the time. I mean, to be touring with those bands, those were huge stadiums. I mean, even now when you go back and look at the videos, Journey would hit the stage and just a sea of people, just a bunch of heads going all the way out there. Queen, same thing.
It was incredible. Yeah. We were just, the first show we did was with Kiss, I think in Atlanta. 30,000 people, 25,000 people. But we were so tight. The band had played so much and rehearsed so much. We had worked on the set. We knew at very strict 45 minutes, you got to be gone, And so we had that all worked out. But other than that, we just played. It was just, that's the band. That's what we did, So we went over well. The crowd liked us, and we had that song on the radio at the time. So it was great. And we were on top of the world there for a minute.
I could see visions of a book in my head, like just the idea of touring with those names and those bands and just the time of it all. Where did your band go after that?
Well, New England broke up not long after that. Then the three of us, John left the band. So that's when we were looking for a guitar player singer to replace John. I knew Gene Simmons. We had toured together and same manager. So I called Gene. I said, Gene, we need a singing guitar player that writes good songs. And Gene said, look no further call this number. So that was Vinnie Casano's number in LA. So I called up Vinnie. Vinnie goes, oh, yeah, I know about you guys. Yeah, well, let's get together and play. So Vinnie sent us 5 songs of his. He goes, if you guys learn these, let's start there. Okay. He sent us the 5 songs. So the 3 of us learned those songs perfect. Vinnie flew in from LA with a guitar, plugged into a Marshall amp that we had at rehearsal, and we just played those songs. There was no talking or we needed to learn chords, or we all knew what we were doing. We played them, he sang, and it was done. And Vinnie says, oh, this is great. Let's go to LA. And I was way into getting out of Boston. So we'd recorded that album, the New England album, and the first one in LA. So I liked it out there for music, in those days. We literally packed up and went to LA, started the band with Vinnie, and did that thing.
So what did you call the band at that point?
It was called Warrior.
And what year is that? 76?
Oh, wait. No. New England came out in 79, first album, tours. That must have been 80, I'm going to say 82, 81, 82, before Vinnie joined Kiss, obviously. So, yeah, we were writing together. We never got to go out and play. We did a demo for CBS, 3-song demo, and didn't get picked up. And then shortly after that, Vinnie joined Kiss. He and I kept working together. The other guys went back to Boston. Well, Gary Shea stayed in LA with me. And then Hirsch went back to Boston, the drummer. I kept working with Vinnie. He would need to demo up songs, so we'd do it in my little studio. And then he and I worked together a little bit on some stuff. So we stayed in touch for a long time. And then while he was in Kiss, he would call me from the road, and I went to see a couple of shows because I knew those guys, and it was fun, So.
And then you developed this band.
Yeah, Alcatrazz. Yeah, Graham Bonnet's manager was looking to put together a band. Didn't want a solo thing with Graham, just a band. Andy Truman, our manager's son, saw an ad in BAM magazine that Gary had put in there talking about these 2 guys from New England want to do something. Called us up and said, so let's get together. So we said, great. We knew who Graham was, and he wasn't doing anything at the time, but so we went out to Graham's and worked on some stuff in the garage and said, okay, let's do this. And there were a couple of guys that were supposed to be Zal Clemson and Barrymore Barlow were supposed to be the drummer and guitar player. So then they kind of bailed and decided not to do it. So we started auditioning people, but it all came together pretty quick. Didn't take long. Once things got going, especially once we auditioned people and because we had a record deal already and with Rockshire. So we auditioned people, got a drummer, and we found Yngwie. And that was instant. Yngwie came in, played. We were like, yeah, this is great. Let's go. And so we started writing songs and did an album. We had a great rehearsal place down at Rockshire, a huge rehearsal place. So we had it made there. And the studio they owned their own studio next door. So we rehearsed, wrote the songs, moved our gear into the studio, and just played. It was almost live. I mean, the album was almost live.
That's awesome. That's amazing. So when you met Yngwie, how long was he here? Like, how did that connection come about? Because a lot of people talk about him being not long here in America before that all happened.
Right. He'd been in the band Steeler. I don't know if you know who Mike Varney is. He's this guy that was finding hot guitar players and making records with them and stuff. And a lot of those guys went on to get pretty heavy gigs out of that. And he was going to do something with Yngwie. I don't really know what they ever did, but he got in Steeler, the band Steeler, and they played around LA a little bit. That wasn't working out. So Yngwie came out. Somebody had seen him with Steeler and said, oh, man, you guys got to check this guy out. So somebody brought him over to our auditioning at our rehearsal, and it wasn't much of an audition. He just came in and played. We were doing some Rainbow stuff at the time, and he just came in and played, and it was great. I mean, he played his ass off. I liked it. He just played with this fire and this intensity. I call it reckless abandon, and which I love. I don't want to play jazz. I don't want to be in a prog band. You know what I mean? I like my influences in that way are from The Who. I'd seen The Who a couple of times, and that's what took my head off. Was those guys were playing like it was the last time they would ever play. Townsend, it was crazy. So I love that about Yngwie. He just went for it.
That's awesome. I just saw The Who play maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Oh,
And
wow.
oh my God, we were in New Jersey. I couldn't believe it. I was looking around and everybody was just like, everyone has like their mouths hanging open because he could still scream. He
I
still
know.
throws those screams out, and the arm
It's
is
amazing.
swinging around with the guitar.
It's amazing. It's just sad that, the Entwistle died and Keith Moon died. I saw them the first time with Keith Moon, the original band, in about a 1,500-seater in Boston. And I was a big Who fan, but they hadn't toured the States much. So I don't know this wasn't very many shows into that tour. And they just played like, it just took my head off. It was just so great. Oh, God. Big influence on me. Huge influence.
I totally understand that, because there's so many things in life that influence us. But when it hits your core, where you say, that's where I want to be, that's my target. And I feel that you've done that in Alcatrazz. Like I was mentioning, listening to Jet, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like, you guys really are still replicating the heart and soul of your true music from the beginning.
Yeah.
Talking about the early 80s, all of your songs may be similar but different, but I really feel like you had a basis for the way you wanted it to be.
We did. Everybody's heart is in it. Giles, the singer, is much younger than us. Giles grew up listening to Alcatrazz. So Giles loved that music from the time he got into music. And he worked in record stores in New Zealand and Australia. And he was pushing he's like, you guys, check this out, this band, Alcatrazz, oh my God. So when got involved with Giles, it was a natural. I mean, he just sang the crap out of the stuff. And he originally was managing the Graham Bonnet band. So I knew he was a singer, but Graham wasn't doing the sound checks. So we needed to have a singer at the sound checks. So Giles would sing the songs. And we would do songs off No Parole from Rock and Roll that Graham wouldn't sing, but we would do them with Giles. So it was it was a preview of what's to come. It was great. And Giles would just sing the crap out of these things. And I used to think, wow, he's hitting all the notes. He's killing this stuff. Fast forward ahead, it all worked out. And Giles ended up being the singer. And we've done 100 shows with him. And so it was a natural to do. I wanted to do this record. We all did. I wanted to re-record those songs with Giles because he sings them so good. And we just thought, it's just not fair that nobody gets to hear him singing these songs on record. So that's how the whole thing got started. And then it kind of morphed into, well, we're going to do a couple of songs off some recent albums. And we did. And then there's one new song on there that we wrote together. Yeah, it's been a real good natural progression, and it's where my heart is, this kind of music. I've played in a lot of different things, but for me, this is really where I'm at, and that influence, it's funny, the Who influence, Zeppelin, is still there. I mean, when I'm writing or playing, I still feel that and channel that, it's in me. I grew up on it. As I got serious about music, I really locked into that because in high school, we all were into the Who and we used to play that stuff and we got fired. We couldn't work because I lived in North Carolina at the time and people were like, no, they wanted soul music basically. And I loved the Four Tops and the Temptations. I loved all that stuff, but that wasn't what I wanted to play. So we didn't last long. We got fired every gig we played, that was the last time we'd ever play there again, kind of thing. So
That's
because
so
we were
funny.
playing Who songs and some of our own material, which was a rip off of the Who, and I think we even did a Blue Cheer song. Now, you remember Blue Cheer? Well, I think we did a Blue Cheer song. We did some Zeppelin for sure, and we loved the Beatles, but we really didn't do any Beatles. We were more into the harder edge stuff.
So think about this, though. You're thinking back to North Carolina, thinking this is my last time I'm playing here. Did you ever envision at your age, at this point in time, that you'd still be hitting the road or going on tour, like to tour Europe right now and to have other headlining bands with you? I mean, that's got to be a dream come true in some sort of way. Some people abandon music, they just have it for a block of time and they're gone.
Yeah, I don't know. I just I knew this is what I wanted to do. I mean, this was my dream, was to do exactly what I'm doing now. And like I tell people, I've produced some bands, nobody of any note, but I'd produce young bands and they'd be talking about, getting rich and being rock stars. And I said, guys, get into music because you can't live without it. Once you're in, the door closes behind you. Now you're playing professionally. Now figure out how to make money. Be smart, But you got to get in. It's like when you meet a woman that you just, oh, she's the one. That's the way it's got to be. It's got to be like you're just totally in, and nothing's going to get in your way. And then you think about the money. But I said, do not get in it for money. That's a big, big mistake.
Yes, I've heard that time and time again, because in the music business, a lot of times you have to spend money to make money. And a lot of people don't realize that, all these things cost money. And at the end of the day, I recently listened to Eddie Van Halen's brother reading the Audible book that he wrote about Eddie's life and about being in Van Halen. And he says that. At one point I started to count it. He says that at least 3 different times in that book, that every time they played somewhere, they were shelling out money. Everything had to be paid for. And they weren't making money being Van Halen. And they were like scratching their heads like, we're like one of the biggest bands around. And why aren't we making money, And I didn't realize that. I'm just a fan, So when I listen to these books and stuff, I'm like, wow, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, they give you an example. Like, so we tour the last Alcatrazz tours. So the other guys live in Europe. At the time, Joe Stump and Joe's in Boston, I'm in Chicago. So our plane flights were $1,200 a piece. Then there's Ubers or cabs to and from the airport that you don't think about. Well, that ends up at the end of a tour, you're talking $500 in cabs and blah, blah, blah. Hotels. This tour we did in America with Girlschool and Lillian Axe, hotels were $1,200 a night for all of us. We were staying at Motel 6s, the cheapest things we could get, but it was $1,200 a night. The Chevy Suburban that each band had those were about $4,500 for the tour each. So that was $12,000, $13,000 just in those. And then the truck was another $3,000. So it's just insane. That's not talking about food or any other expenses. So yeah, it's crazy. I don't think about it. I just I have blinders on and I just hope for the best.
It's definitely an eye-opening experience, though, when you start realizing that you're planning literally so much ahead. It's funny that you mentioned Joe Stump. I actually just saw him at the Cutting Room. He was playing with Rob Balducci. The two of them were doing a guitar event together. And it's just incredible, just to see the two of them, they're not singing. They're just doing straight guitar, you know, and it's just, that to me, I love, it's just.
Oh, me too.
You're mesmerized by, and they're similar, but they're different, So if you're a fan of Rob and you're a fan of Joe's, that's the kind of event to kind of go to because it's a stand-up event. They get on, they get off, and it's done,
Yeah, I love playing with Joe. He has that same thing that Yngwie had about the attitude. When Joe came, we were in LA and got a hold of Joe, and he says, I'd love to come out and let's play and see what happens. It was not really an audition. I mean, there was no question about him being good enough to do that. That's insane. So it was more about like, let's just get together and see how the chemistry is. Joe walked into a rehearsal place and we just played like 8 songs, just 1, 2, 3 play. He knew them note for note, but he played with that same fire that I love. And that does stem from The Who. When we auditioned Steve Vai, and Steve Vai played like that. Steve walked in and just took the strings off the guitar. I mean, he was just so aggressive. That was a huge thing for me. I loved it. I didn't care what Steve had done in the past, the Frank Zappa stuff. I didn't like Frank Zappa. So I didn't care about that or his Berkeley, his chops, whatever. All I cared about was he's a great guitar player and he played like he was mad at the world. And that's the way Joe plays. Joe plays like he's pissed off. He's not, but he just plays, he just goes for it. Every night he plays, it's the same. Joe does not have bad nights or off nights.
You know, it's funny the way you mentioned him because I'm very good friends with Rob Caggiano. And when Rob was at Berkeley, his tutor was Joe Stump. And Rob was like, check out Joe when you get there. And it was interesting because I really realized by watching Joe, he plays like a machine. The way he stands, he's got this whole way of moving his body, and it's like he goes into another zone. It's pretty incredible.
Yes. Yeah. He's what I call the real deal, you know, and there's a lot of great guitar players out there, but they're worried more about their fingers and the fretboard and the technical end of it. Joe's got all that together. He doesn't have to think about that. He doesn't worry about that. That's there. I mean, teaching at Berkeley for all these years, he's way past all that. So when he plays, he's in a zone, man. He's just, and I love that. Again, it goes back to watching The Who. That's a sense I got watching The Who for the first time. I had great seats at the Orpheum Theater in Boston. And I was about eye level with Townsend. I was on his kind of more on his side. The amps were hitting me in the face and he was right there. And he was somewhere else. He wasn't looking at the audience going, you know, playing to the people in the front row. It was like he was just gone. The whole band, that's the way they were.
I always find it so interesting when you watch a band because every band has individuals in it, but you could really tell when, like you said, when a band is really tight, you don't need to talk in between songs. Like they just roll right into the next song and the fans can't get enough. You know, they don't need the conversation. They just roll right into it.
Right.
That's
incredible.
And
that's one thing that I love that we have now is Giles is an extremely intelligent guy and he could talk about tons of things. Live now, no talk. It's no talk, less talk, more rock. You know, we used to have a problem with that where Graham would talk about things, talk about a divorce he had or whatever. And it was just like, oh God, I just wanted to crawl under the stage, you know, because I just wanted to play. And now there's no time in between songs. I mean, it's really, we just bang them out. Giles may say hello or this song is off this album, you know, or something. But boy, there's no talk. It's great.
That is so great. I love talking to you because you really have it under wraps. It's like you've been able to see things and put it together. But the way you explain things is such a human experience. I really enjoy speaking with you. It's just,
cool.
You're
Thank you.
really like a superhuman, you know, and it's really, really cool. I wanted to go back slightly to the 80s because that's my favorite era. I get teased all the time for being in the 80s. This is a little bit a kind of what I call a tricky question. If you had to be transported back to Alcatrazz in the 80s, in comparison to Alcatrazz now, what would you like to bring from now to then? And what would you like to bring from then to now?
Well, from now to then, it would be being a little smarter, a little bit more realistic about what the potential of the band is, and focusing on where we should be playing and how we should be doing this. We weren't all on the same page. I'm not going to get into naming people, but we just weren't. So it was not together. And now we know that Joe and I and Giles and Gary, we're on the same page. And that's so important. That's like a train coming down the tracks. You can't stop it. In those days, though, it wasn't that way. It was just real scattered. And, when we got on stage and we played, yeah, we had some good nights for sure, but it was never solid. It was never like, oh man, this is magical. We're really rocking. Like I said, we have a good night or two, but what I'd like from then to now is the recklessness of it. Harness that a little bit, which I think we've done. Joe does that. When I'm playing, I don't care about anything. I'm just playing. And I know the songs well enough I don't have to, if you have to think about it, it's too late. You know what I mean? If you're on stage counting and thinking, you're like, the train's left the station. So I know the material, and I just look over at Joe and Giles, and we're in the moment, so I love that. But that reckless thing that Alcatrazz had in the day, which it was more just about, we just didn't know. Really. I mean, we were all professionals and we'd done it, before, but it was just kind of loosey-goosey. Unfortunately, it wasn't good for us then, but I like the fact now that it's not real polished and real, like, we're not looking at our watch going, that's only got to be 4 minutes. It just, the show's an hour. When we're on this tour coming up, we'll play for an hour. And we get it ahead of time. You look at the songs and you go, okay, we'll do these songs and they're going to be about an hour. So we're good. But within that hour, we're not thinking about it. We're not thinking about it. We're just playing and having fun, so, because we know when that last song comes, you look at I use a computer program for keyboards. So I look over and the set list is in the computer, and I have to change programs. So when I see that last song coming, I'm like, okay, come back to earth. We got to remember, we finished that when we're out of here,
That's
Yeah,
great. I wanted to bring up this upcoming tour. Can you tell the audience about Girls School? I mean, they have fans, but not everyone may be a fan. So what is Girls School like?
They are super nice, fun people. They're the most normal people you'd ever want to meet. We get along with them so good, and we've toured with them a lot. From the first show we ever played with them, it was a fun thing. And I'd hoped we'd continue to tour with them. They're really nice people. They're real pros. When you're in a hotel bar or something, everybody's like laughing, having fun. And you would think Girls School, the kind of music they play, you think, oh boy, they're a loose cannon, look out. Once they get on stage, it's go time, so they're very professional and they just kill it live. They're great. They're so much energy. I mean, they just play their ass off and they got it down. They've been doing it for so long, and they've played all the biggest. I mean, my God, they played at Wacken. They were one of the original bands to play the first festival kind of thing in Germany, and play with Motorhead, and they've been there, done that 1,000 times. So now the tour is so much fun because they're relaxed. They're not uptight about the crowd or how many people are here. It kind of like us is just, we get on and play and just deliver the goods, this kind of thing. And they really do every night. They're so consistent. It's really a lot of fun. Really a lot of fun. They're a great band.
That is so awesome. And I know you're also going to be working with Bangalore Choir.
Yeah.
David Reese is a very good friend of mine for a very long time. His music to me, Bangalore Choir, I'm a big fan. Every time I talk to David, I remind him of his 2010 album, Decadence. And he always laughs because he knows that's my favorite. I used to go jogging to that album. And it's amazing how music, when you listen back to music, you could see where you are as a fan in your life,
Yeah.
And a lot of times people forget that, like, as a fan, your music brought me through this experience, or as a fan,
Right.
to me, it's not just the lyrics and the music, but it's how it kind of blanketed over my problems during that time,
And I've had people say that to me, and come up, and we could be in Italy or England or whatever, and somebody will come up and say, you guys mean a lot to me because I love the band, but you mean a lot to me because I was going through a divorce, and it got me through it. And I was kind of like, it got you through. And I said, well, what do you mean? And they go, well, it was my anchor. I would listen to it every day, and it made me feel better, stuff like that. And I was so flattered by that. That's a huge compliment, because that's what it's supposed to be about, is emotional. It's supposed to be emotional, not just, this one-dimensional thing. So when somebody says it really got to them, to their core, and helped them get through a rough time for months, maybe, and we were one of the bands that they listened to that helped, then that means a lot to me. That's like, wow, that's the real deal, Gosh.
Yes, yeah. I always say that sometimes it's a song that is the only normal part of your day.
Yeah, right. Well, you can count on it.
Exactly.
It's recorded. It's going to be like that. And
every time.
Yeah. And I used to listen to stuff, and I would listen, and then I heard a song, Zeppelin. When I was listening to Zeppelin, I'd think, okay, I know what's going on. And then I'd listen to it for the 50th time, and I'd go, well, I never heard that before. Wow, so Paige is actually playing that, and the keyboards are doing whatever. And I just was, and that's what I really enjoyed that. Listening to The Who, like Tommy. When I first started listening to Tommy, I was just overwhelmed by how good it was. And I listened to it over and over. And every time I would hear it, I would hear something new. And I love that.
Yes. So this has been a great interview. I really enjoy speaking with you. We're going to roll out with the song Jet to Jet, but how can the fans follow Alcatrazz? You could drop your social media. Let me know how they can do that.
Well, you can always go to our website and see what we're doing. We're getting ready to update it again, and it'll be a little bit more up to date, but you'll see exactly what we're doing. That's just alcatrazofficial.com. I mean, Facebook's good. Our Facebook page is pretty current.
Instagram, I've been following you guys. Yeah. Very good.
That too.
Wow. Well, I'm so excited. Yes, thank you so much. We're going to roll out to Jet, which is your latest song. So
cool.
It was a pleasure. Yes, pleasure.
Oh, yeah. This has been, I had no idea this was going to be this. This is great. I've really enjoyed this and enjoyed meeting you.
Thank you. Well, you'll have to tell your buddy, because I'm interviewing him in a couple of days.
Okay.
Yeah, tell him to be ready.
Okay, I will. I'm just going to tell him, look forward to it, because it's really just been fun. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Take care. Have a good night.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
We made a landing
have been listening to Bringing the Darkness to the Light with Catherine Nadal, professional psychic medium, Dream Central Station, LLC. My audio editor is Al Hemberger at the Loft Recording Studios in Bronxville, New York. This is WNEW 102.7 FM radio.